Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number one. Robert, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you today?
Doing well. How about you?
Oh, I'm okay. Very interesting times we live in. It's easy to get caught up in the news every 5 minutes. Something's changing. So I haven't spoken to you since last year, so I just wanted to call in and touch base and see if there's any updates on the wind energy proposal out here and exploits from Everett. As I think you mentioned yesterday in your post sample, that Everett claimed previously that they were trying to plan a meeting for this January. When I contacted them in December, wondering when their next public information session would be held. So now we're into getting close to the middle of March here, and there's still no public information session. So I visited the office that they have finally staffed for the afternoons in Botwood. And the lady there, she was very friendly to speak with, real pleasure. And she told me that there was no plans of a public meeting, no discussions of it even. But the guys from EVREC were actually down in the area in February. And I believe they may have met with some municipalities, but the residents, again, as from the start of this whole process, are being left out in the dark with no concerns or answers being given from the proponents. So I just, once again, want to voice my gross displeasure with the way that our provincial leaders are handling this and allowing these charlatans to proceed with the proposal, even though they do not have the support of the majority of the residents, in my opinion. And like I said, I'm just absolutely appalled at the way this process has been going through, and the residents being left out in the dark and not having a voice is just completely undemocratic, and the politicians, in my opinion, should be ashamed of what they're doing.
Right. You say being allowed to proceed, but not really, though, right? I mean, they don't have a green light on anything at this moment in time. They've simply got, the same arrangement everyone else does, access to leasing Crown land, and they've identified the water reservoir that they will use, but they don't have a environmental impact assessment that's even been approved so far as guidelines go, let alone a final approval, right?
No, that's correct. Actually, for the public, public input for the EIS guidelines, I believe the deadline for that for public comments is March 27th. So I recommend people who are interested in this to review the guidelines that they have released on the government website, and you could submit your concerns to the provincial government to add. Now, I did glance through it. I didn't actually have time yet to go through it in detail, but there was a couple parts that I did appreciate that they had included, such as providing history of hydrogen projects that they have done in the past, as well as wind energy projects that they've completed in the past. And from my research and understanding, that they have none of either of those. So
I had to look around too. Again, I couldn't find it.
No, and the proponent is still operating out here by installing met towers, doing surveys for their groundwork and their pipelines, and they're still doing their wildlife studies. So actually, a little bit of information I was given yesterday from a source was that I was informed that there were surveyors traveling around the Botwood Peterview area where they're trying to run a pipeline from the plant down to the shoreline to the docking station, or the port, sorry. And the information I got, now I haven't been able to verify this, but this is from a trusted source, is that there are surveyors from Landmark Surveys going around the area, and when questioned by residents, they're saying that they're doing work for the town. So one resident called the town to ask what project it was, and they finally got a hold of somebody who gave them the truth, and they said, well, no, the town doesn't have any projects undergo in that area. That's for EVREC. So now you've got the subcontractors for EVREC going around misleading locals on what they're doing on near their private property. So again, like the shadiness between what's going on and the amount of misdirection and misinformation coming from these people is just absolutely appalling. And another thing that I found out recently, well, not found out recently, but originally EVREC stated that all the jobs for this proposal and for this project would be located in the exploits region. Now, from their EA registration that they submitted last year, we can see that they're planning to have 2 remote offices, one in St. John's and one in Corner Brook. Now, I can kind of half understand seeing one in St. John's where the government offices and the major legal firms would be. So I can kind of tolerate one small remote branch out there, but I don't understand what the benefit to having one in Corner Brook would be. Again, I believe that it's tied into the fact that marine contractors are one of the main investors in this proposal so far. So I feel like that there's some there's some information being presented by Everett that isn't factual, and I can guarantee that.
Fair enough. And I'm not asking this question to be saucy, but what does the location of the offices have to do with the price of tea in China sort of thing? Because, it's not uncommon to see businesses that are set up or industries that are set up outside of the metro region have some sort of satellite in St. John's for all the obvious reasons, whether it be law firms or close by government or what have you. But what's your general concern with location of satellite offices?
Well, the thing is that we were told from the beginning that all the positions were going to be in the exploits region to benefit the people of the exploits region, to bring in the economic diversification and higher paying jobs in the area. So if you have these remote offices with the higher paying roles such as engineering, finance, legal, that's jobs that should be in the exploits region according to the information we were originally given by these proponents. So now it sounds like that they're going to be moving these higher paying positions out of our area into remote offices in St. John's and Corner Brook. And like I said, I can understand a few positions in St. John's where the legal and political scene is basically held. But to have those positions over on the West Coast, again, it's taking the food off our plates, basically, for the people of exploits. So the people that are fighting for the jobs and saying they want this project and that they want to have an economic diversification and investments in our area, absolutely, I agree with that, and that's what I want as well. But not every proposal that comes along is a beneficial proposal in the long run for the people here, and you need to keep that in mind, right?
Yeah, and of course, I have no earthly idea what their satellite staffing would look like. And, sometimes when you hear the proponents talk about benefits to the region specific and jobs, I think most people hear that as the jobs in construction, whether it be from the engineers all the way down to contractors, skilled tradespeople on site. But when Everett has such a minimal presence in the community, doesn't even know when their next public presentation is going to be, they're a long way from staffing up a satellite office. But it's important to talk about, sure.
Yeah, and absolutely. And if you check online, you can see where these Canadian companies have to register their financial contributions and investments from. And according to the information I can see, they haven't registered any investment since November of last year. So I believe that either the lack of information sessions is either they can't afford it because they don't have any investments, or they are just afraid to show their faces, because the last one that was held almost a year ago in April of 24, Ravi, the chairman, was booed publicly by a lot of the residents here. So now we have a situation in Botwood where some of the councillors were actually flown to Montreal to attend a hockey game on Everett's dime. So we have so many questions and we're not getting answers from anybody. And Everett is hiding behind the fact that they're saying, for the last year and a half or almost 2 years now, that, we're not going to release factual information or anything until we know exactly what we're doing. But I mean, how long can you keep going without releasing information? For me, that just screams they still have no idea what they're doing. So my personal opinion is that they're trying to shop it around and sell the project to somebody else, similar to ABO. So I think that's what this whole gambit is for, is that they're basically promoters and trying to pump and dump this project off to somebody else, which is very common in other industries such as mining.
Fair enough. And when you say market, that'll be the be-all and end-all here, because the market, when the proponents first came to town and they had the big congregation out on Bay St. George, it was, signing MOUs with Germany and talking about the explosion and the appetite for green hydrogen. But some 4 years later, it's just not the case any longer. And so even for the opportunity to raise capital to build these projects, some of which we're talking tens of billions of dollars, with no market, no power purchase agreements in place, overseas infrastructure for offloading, non-existent, I don't know where any of these projects go. And not to be talked about reading between the lines, but if all of a sudden World Energy is talking about a data center, then that kind of screams, that there is a big shift in focus, whether or not green hydrogen is going to be what people thought it was going to be 4 years ago. Even the feds, no one more bullish on the industry than the federal government 4 years ago. And their forecast has been downgraded from 12 trillion to 2 trillion by mid-century. So with all of the aforementioned hurdles that they have to face, access to capital is going to tell the tale here. It looks like environmental assessments or environmental impact statements are going to be able to be achieved. Look no further than the fact that the government has already green-lit one, or rubber stamped. Rubber stamp's probably not fair. Has green-lit one, but I don't know if they have the opportunity to raise any money if they got nowhere to sell the product.
Well, I believe right now that the goal for these other proponents is to get through the EIS project process in order to obtain the line of credit from the federal government. So I think that's their goal right now, is to just fumble their way through the EIS project process on a project they know is doomed to fail in order to harvest some federal subsidies or investments credit. So that's the only thing that they are looking forward to right now. Like even over in Germany, like you said, they're not looking at our ammonia to use as hydrogen. And Germany themselves, they've signed agreements with a domestic pipeline with other countries. They're multi-billion-dollar pipelines. So they know that the conversion from ammonia back to hydrogen is absolutely just a silly idea. And if you look down in Australia, I believe it was a massive amount of the proposed investments there, over 90%, I believe, have been scrapped since their initial conception. But here in Newfoundland, unfortunately, our politicians are still pushing this wild project without any market value or any real reason for it to even be in place. And all the ones that were shouting from the rooftop saying what a good project and what a good deal it is for the province, they're all decided not to run again. So, like, even federally and provincially, all these politicians are just jumping ship. So, I mean, to me, that signals that they realize that maybe, hey, I was misled and I don't want to face the music, so I'm just going to step down.
I think that's more about their political fortunes in the big scheme of things, maybe, versus one industry. Correct me if I'm wrong. Federal monies, you know, we did see Mr. Risley secure a $128 million line of credit with the federal government, but the other tax breaks and or subsidies, they're based on production, right? So you can't get access to any of those until you're actually producing the product that can be labeled whatever level of green, because that's how that works, isn't it? There's no money available unless you're producing.
Oh, that's true. But for the sorry, my tooth clocked. It's true with the line of credit that they are access to. Like these companies, for example, they've, from what I can see from their investment registrations, it looks like somebody in Newfoundland invested $1.5 million. Two other people invested $750,000, so about $3 million total early on in the project phase. And since then, they've got a couple more million. So let's say for a high range, they've got about $5 million invested in this specific project. If they get access to a $128 million line of credit, is there restrictions on how they can use that line of credit, or can they just use that with their connected businesses and just funnel the money from the line of credit into their buddies' pockets, and then when they go bankrupt and they don't pay it back, then they'll be okay, but everybody else will be on the hook for the payments for it? Well,
the government of Canada would be at the very top of secured creditor lists, but I get the point. I appreciate the time, Robert, and the email, which I did speak to yesterday, as you mentioned, and we'll talk again soon. Off to the news we go.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Patty. You have a wonderful day.
You too, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.